My name is Jon Copley and I work at the University of Southampton. I'm a marine biologist and my research explores what lives where and why in the deep ocean that covers most of our planet. So I think we're familiar with the idea that ours is a blue planet because so much of it is covered by ocean, but most of that ocean is actually really deep. More than half our world is covered by water that's more than 2 miles deep. And that's deeper than dolphins and whales dive. It's in fact deeper than sharks swim. But there is plenty of life down there for us to explore. And that's my job, figuring out what lives where and why in the deep ocean. And the deep ocean isn't just one habitat or environment. It's just as varied as the world above the waves. So just like we have rainforests and savanna and tundra and all these different habitats in the world on land, we've got lots of different types of habitats in the deep ocean, each with their own inhabitants, their own patterns of life. So my work is to figure out the patterns of life in the deep ocean. And there are 2 reasons for that. One is it tells us more fundamentally about how species are adapted to different conditions, because the conditions in these deep sea habitats are very different from the ones we're familiar with up here on dry land. But also, the deep ocean is being affected by our activities as humans. So our litter and pollution ends up in the deep ocean, unfortunately. There are impacts from taking things out of the deep ocean. And climate change affects all deep sea habitats and all deep sea life. And we need to understand the patterns of life down there to understand the consequences of our actions and hopefully make better informed choices for the future once we do understand the consequences of our actions down there. In terms of what it's like doing my work, well, when we're exploring life in the deep ocean, we're out on expeditions aboard research ships. So we're living and working at sea on a big ship, maybe 100 meters long, and there's typically 20 or 30 of us as an expedition team aboard the ship, and maybe 20 more people, the crew actually running the ship and looking after us. And we're out there for a month or more. We don't come back into shore. We're far away from land, exploring the deep ocean. And to explore the deep ocean, we use deep diving vehicles. So these come in 2 types. There are remotely operated vehicles, which we remote control from the ship. We can send them down into the deep ocean. They're connected to the ship by a long cable. And we have a room on board the ship that's a bit like mission control. Lots of big screens that show video pictures from the cameras that are on the deep diving vehicle. And the vehicle's got robotic arms, which we can use to make measurements of things with sensors to understand the environment that we're exploring, and to collect samples and specimens as well to understand the patterns of life that are down there. We do also sometimes use what we call human-occupied vehicles, and these are mini submarines that are capable of diving very deep into the ocean, more than 2 miles deep. And in that case, they're not connected to the ship, and one scientist is usually on board for each dive, with a pilot and maybe a co-pilot who operate the vehicle. So on behalf of the whole expedition team, when you're the scientist in the mini-sub, you've got to make all the measurements, collect all the samples, get through the kind of to-do list that the expedition team has decided for that dive. So our typical day starts by getting our deep diving vehicle ready for its mission, for its next dive, making sure we've got the right equipment on it, the right sensors to measure environmental conditions, the right sampling equipment we want to collect specimens and samples. Then we launch it. It dives down into the deep ocean. That might take a couple of hours to get to the ocean floor, depending on how deep we're going. And then when it arrives at the ocean floor, well, if it's a remotely operated vehicle, we're all in mission control, directing its operations, making sure it's going to the right places and doing the right things. If you're the scientist in a human-occupied vehicle, then you're in charge of that dive and making sure you're getting through that to-do list on everyone's behalf. This is your one chance to explore the deep ocean and get the samples and data that everyone needs to understand it. Then the vehicle comes back up with the samples and data, and once it's lifted back onto the ship, then we rush out and we get all the data off it and we collect all the samples from it, and we take those into laboratories on board the ship. And then we spend quite a bit of time after each dive processing the data and samples. So going through everything and making sure it's properly preserved, or we're getting what measurements we need there and then, so that we can make the most of that opportunity that we've had to actually get into the deep ocean and explore it. And then there's time for a bit of rest, of course, and some sleep and some food, and then the cycle starts again. Next day, next dive. And we work round the clock like that during our expedition over a month or so, to make the most of that opportunity we have to visit that really remarkable part of our planet. What I love about exploring the deep ocean is it gives us opportunities to see things, and sometimes even go to places that no one has been to before. So our deep diving vehicles, when they arrive on the seabed, no one's ever visited that point on our planet. No one's actually seen that particular part of our world. And you realise that when you're looking at the screens in mission control, or you're peering through the porthole from a human-occupied vehicle. And the animals that we find very often are new species, new to science. So you realise you're encountering a life form that no human has ever met before. And then there's lots more questions that arise from that. So, it's a new species that no one's seen before, and then what does it eat? How does it reproduce? Where else does it live apart from where we're finding it now? How does it get around? We've got all these questions to answer to try and understand that species and how it's part of the pattern of life that we're trying to figure out in the deep ocean. So it's hugely exciting because it's real exploration science. You get to see brand new things and sometimes actually go to brand new places. I became a deep ocean explorer by becoming a biologist. So I did a degree in zoology because I was interested in animals and understanding more about what they do. I grew up loving TV wildlife documentaries, and I still do. And these days, sometimes I work as a science advisor for some documentary series as well when they involve life in the deep ocean. So I did a degree in zoology and then realised I was really interested in what lives in the deep ocean. So I took a master's degree in oceanography, which then made me a marine biologist and gave me an understanding as well of this kind of physics and chemistry and so on of the ocean, to understand more about the environment as well. And then I did a PhD, which is like the apprenticeship for becoming an independent scientist. So you have your own research project, your own puzzle to figure out, and that experience makes you an independent researcher, then capable of leading your own research projects in the future. So that's how I got into deep sea exploration. In terms of qualifications that anyone who wants to get into exploring the deep ocean could consider, well, any type of science or indeed engineering can take you into the deep ocean. So when I'm on an expedition, I'm working with, yes, other biologists, but I'm also working with people who are chemists, because they're interested in understanding what's in seawater, what's dissolved in it, how does that vary, what does that mean for life on Earth. I'm working with physicists as well on expeditions who are trying to figure out how the oceans behave, how does the water move, how does it mix, what does that mean for life on Earth as well. And of course, we've got engineers as part of our expedition teams as well, people who've designed and built and operate the deep diving vehicles that we use. And also, not just mechanical engineers, but software engineers as well, because we get a lot of data that we need to be able to wrangle and deal with. So pretty much whatever form of science or indeed engineering might be of interest to you can take you into the deep ocean. There are opportunities there for everyone. If I were giving my younger self a piece of advice today, that advice would be find and follow your passion for your subject. So don't worry so much about, oh, should I do this or should I do that? Because, where will it take me in 10 years' time? Think about what you care about right now and look at opportunities that are out there to work on that thing or work in that area. Because if you find a thing you're passionate about and make that what you work on, you will get the most out of it. You will develop skills and experience that will carry you forward, in lots of different potential avenues. You'll make the most of the here and now opportunities that you've got. So maybe don't worry so much about long term, is this a good thing, to be choosing now? Choose what you're doing next based on what you care about most right now, would be my advice to my younger self.